So my name is Terje Watterdal. It's quite of a mouthful, a traditional Norwegian name. Just a few things about myself first. I've been working with Afghanistan since 1995. At that time, we worked with Afghan refugees in Pakistan, and I worked with a Norwegian NGO specifically targeting people with disabilities. And was in Afghanistan the first time in 1998. This was during the time of the Taliban government. And I traveled alone with 11 blind men across the Khyber Pass over the border. They were walking in the long string behind me with their suitcase in one hand and one hand on the shoulder of the person in front. So that was my first meeting with Afghanistan, that amazing country that managed to creep under my skin somehow. And then I came back in 2008 for UNESCO, and I was part of the time in Afghanistan, the other part in Palestine. And I've been living and working in Afghanistan as a country director of the Norwegian Afghanistan Committee since 2013. And at least I will stay for another 2 years, so I'm committed to Afghanistan. If you see the picture that we have, we are talking about sustainable social and economic development. I guess this bazaar was constructed with a lot of hope, but as you can see, it's no longer active. And this is what you see a lot in Afghanistan. This is taken on the road between Bamiyan and Jaguri in Ghazni province. So there was a lot of hope. And some of us who are born optimists still have hope for Afghanistan. And the hope we have is the Afghan people. Not the Afghan government, not the Afghan elite, but it is the Afghan people. Just give you a very, very brief history about the organization that I represent. We were founded as a response to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. When Soviet invaded, people started demonstrating outside the Soviet embassy in Oslo. They were people from all walks of life. They were students, they were housewives, they were taxi drivers, they were professors and doctors. And it was that solidarity between one small country of Norway, which was a neighbor of the Soviet Union, with another, Afghanistan, who was, we felt at that time, violated by Soviet troops. From this movement, grassroots movements, we were formed as an organization in 1980. We are non-for-profit and we are politically independent. We have members in Norway, but also a few outside the country, here in the UK and in other European countries. We elect a board every year. The board is voluntary. They work voluntary without salary, and we have subcommittees supporting us who are in the field with program implementation, because we only have 3 people in our Oslo head office. In Afghanistan, we have about 360 people. 3 of us are expatriates, the rest are Afghans. And we are very proud of the fact that we have about 40% of our staff being Afghan women. I believe it's the highest among any organization that are not specifically targeting women. But then we also have a program called Solidarity in Action. Many people like you from different countries who have a love for Afghanistan, who have knowledge that we need in Afghanistan, they come and work either for free, or if they have a job, they would get leave without pay, and we would reimburse their loss of income. So the idea is that we want people's heart, and you know, they see the heart at the bottom there, that's our logo, it's a heart for Afghanistan. So we don't want for people to lose money to work with us, but we also don't want for money to be the primary motive. So there's a lot of philosophy and thinking that goes into this, and we have access to fantastic people who volunteer for us. Mike Fergus is here today, he's one of them. We have professors of agriculture, professors of education, we have midwives and nurses, and we have journalists and photographers. So this is the way that we operate. We work today in 13 provinces, and Ghazni is one of our main focus provinces. And we have a long, long history in that province. We receive money from the Norwegian government, from NORAD, the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, but also from Swedish government, SIDA, UN, but also from your Foreign Commonwealth Office. We had a girls' education program last year and this year, supported by FCO, and we have a small component also supported by DFID. As I mentioned to one of you earlier, we are careful about who we take money from. We don't accept money from USAID because they have a political agenda. We do not take money from the Iranian, from the Saudi, from the Indian, and from the Pakistani government because they are involved in the situation. So as an organization, again, there is a lot of philosophy that is a foundation for what we do, which has also kept us quite safe over these past 38 years. Ghazni was one of the very first provinces where we started working in Afghanistan. In the beginning, like everyone else, we were active in the refugee camps, mainly around Peshawar and Quetta. But soon after, we moved into Afghanistan, and we had quite a charismatic mullah and a controversial warlord called Qari Baba, who people have very different opinions about, but he protected us over the first couple of years. He came from Andar, and Andar district in Ghazni was one of the first provinces where we worked. At that time, most of the staff that came from Oslo were volunteers. So they were nurses and midwives. And one of them, there were two women called Merete. One was a bit short and she was called Small Merete in Afghanistan. And the other one was a bit voluptuous, I guess. So she was called the Big Merete. And they helped women giving safe childbirth in Andar. So, and this is about 35 years ago. So when you travel in small villages in Andar, you will actually find a lot of girls who are called Merete. So this is how the solidarity worked at that time. We are working at the moment in 4 districts in Ghazni. It's in Andar, Ghazni city, Jaguri, and Malistan. And again, this is important to us because we are the Norwegian Afghanistan Committee. We are not the Norwegian Tajik or Hazara or Pashto Committee. So for us, it's important to work and target population groups that is the diversity of Afghanistan. So in Ghazni, we target the Hazara population, the Pashto, the Sikh, and the Tajiks. So we have to keep a very fine balance when we select communities, both based on need, but also to make sure that no one feels that we are over-supporting one particular ethnic group. So with the support of village elders and community members, we have been safe so far. We have never been, as an organization, targeted, but this comes, I believe, also from a mutual respect. Simple things. I went with the mission of the World Food Programme, and they do many wonderful things. But they were going into a community with a convoy of 2 bulletproof cars, brand new white Toyota Land Cruisers. And they were saying they didn't have money for food, but they wanted to make an assessment. What kind of image does that give? So when we travel, we buy used cars. We can't afford the new ones, but even if we could, we're buying used cars. We travel in Corollas and in old banged up Land Cruisers. Again, a symbol of not trying to be better than or more than or different than the people that we work with. Because they are not our beneficiaries, they are our partners and our stakeholders for the future of Afghanistan. So this is Ghazni, the central part in slightly towards the south. It's a relatively big province. It also has quite a large population, about 1.3, but nobody really knows. It's quite ethnically diverse. One thinks that about 60% of the population is Hazara and 35 Pashtun, but many of the Hazaras have left over the last couple of years. So I think if we did a real, if we counted the population, I think we would find very, very different numbers. But these are the statistics that are more or less official. Most of the Afghans who arrived as refugees to Europe, to Norway and the rest of Europe in 2015, were from Ghazni. A large portion were from Ghazni. If we're looking at this district, you can see where we are working. You can see Andar, you can see Ghazni, Jaguri, and Malistan. If we look at this map now, Jagatu, on top there, was taken over by the Taliban yesterday. It was again released after a few hours after they took weapons and put the district center ablaze. Andar is more or less under the control. Giro is more or less under the control. At least half of Karabakh is. Aband is. Mukur is. Gelan is. Nawa is. Ojristan is under pressure and is only the district center and a few buildings there that are under government control. So this is the situation that we are working under in Ghazni. The vision that we have, and I think the bottom part is maybe more important. Our role is to reduce poverty in rural Afghanistan. And we are concerned about many of the policies that are launched by the president because they favor the cities. The president wants for all the teachers in Afghanistan to have a bachelor's degree. They don't even have a diploma. There are no girls in some of the districts in Ghazni that goes to school at all. So you don't get female teachers. Girls can only be educated up to through primary school by a male teacher. So it's hard to get anyone into a teacher training college or a university to take a bachelor degree. So if you're sitting in the palace in Kabul, or if you're sitting in the World Bank in Washington, it may seem like a good idea. But in reality, it favors the elite that has access to everything. So if we're really thinking about Afghanistan, we have to go down on a lower level. Seeing also from Norway, I don't think that our teachers became that much better when they had a bachelor degree or a master degree. You need a passion for teaching, and you need practice. So we are concerned. The same is with with midwives and with nurses. So currently the government is supporting, and I'm sorry I'm becoming political now, but currently the government is supporting private institutes where they educate midwives. They have a higher degree than the community-based midwives that we are training. Our midwives have to be present at least 49 childbirth, and they have to work with the women giving birth 49 times before they can become a midwife. The midwives in the private institutes who may have a bachelor degree or a diploma, they don't have a single one. They have studied the theory of midwifery. That is not a theoretical profession. So I'm concerned when it comes to the development of Afghanistan and what we as an international community are supporting. We try to push the boundaries a little bit, and this is a very famous, or for some people infamous, artist. Her name is Qasimi, and she never covers. She has to fly in and out. She's one of the most popular artists in Afghanistan, and she has recently sung an album of children's songs that we are using in some of the schools that we work with to try to get music into education. It's not possible everywhere, maybe not in Andar, but in Jaguri and in Malistan it is. So Sita Kasimi, she usually charges $10,000 for one performance. She performed for free for us. So we're trying to push the boundaries a little bit within an appropriate cultural context. So when we're talking about development, we had a long discussion in Afghanistan and in Norway on what to focus on. And we went through all the important thematic fields, and it's governance and civil society, gender and human rights, education, health, food security and job creation, disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and emergency response. We realized that if we want to develop rural communities, we actually have to do everything at the same time. If we look at the development through history, we know that for a while all the focus was on primary school. But in order to have good primary schools, you need a good teacher. So you need to get the girls and the boys through secondary school. You need to have a good teacher training college. And you need good faculty members at that teacher training college. And they need to be educated at the university. So it's impossible, we feel, to just focus on one little bit on the development. And of course, if the children do not have access to health or do not have access to nutrition, they will not be able to learn. So again, we have to work with their parents to make sure that they grow food that is as nutritious as possible, that they prepare that food so that it leaves as much nutrition as possible. Those who have been to Afghanistan know that people, they eat fish and people love fish, but it's deep fried, a little bit like it is somewhere in England. And a lot of oil is not necessarily the best thing for a fish, actually. So we realized that we have to work integrated, with integrated rural development in the communities where we work. And the solution to the refugee crisis in Europe, because the refugee crisis was already happening in Pakistan and Iran long time ago. We called it a crisis when they came to our doorstep. But the way to handle that is not to build higher walls and boundaries. The way to handle it is to give Afghan youth a voice, a chance to see a future in Afghanistan. So we believe a lot in helping children and young people find a voice and be heard. This is just a very complex model of how we work, but as you see, everything is integrated with everything. So this is the future of Afghanistan. This is a school outside of Sangimarsha in Jaguri district in Ghazni province. It's a co-educational school, and you have them in many places in Afghanistan as well. And here the children go together from grade 1 to grade 9, boys and girls together. They go in the same classrooms, but they sit on different sides of the aisle. So this is the future. This is who we are working for. Because my generation, our generation, have messed up. So we need to put more trust in the young people that they will do it better than what we have done. And getting to Jaguri is not, for me, is not very easy. There is a direct road. It takes about 6 to 7 hours. They have frequent flying checkpoints by the opposition along the road. We have decided after much discussion with our staff that I would not go on that road because I would also risk the lives of those who travel together with me. So what I do is I fly from Kabul to Bamyan, and then I drive the long way over the mountain. It's called the Iron Mountains between Bamyan province and Wardak, and then through Bezoud and 2 districts of Bezoud into Nawur district in Ghazni and into Jaguri. This is only 250 kilometers. It used to take 18 hours, it now takes 14. So it's really rough mountain tracks that we are going to. Most of the roads are closed from November to April, And I tried to go in April, and this is just a few, because it's an amazing journey. I mean, you can't have, I think, any journey is more beautiful than this one. This is where you fly into. And I know there was a lecture on Bamiyan recently in your society. This is Bamiyan. So you fly in there, you have to stay overnight, and then you start on the road. And I tried April, and the roads were closed. So you see me there struggling, and it's 4,000 meters, so I got completely red in my face, and I was wheezing. It was embarrassing, and my Afghan colleagues cursed themselves for at all allowing me to go. But we had to walk over the mountain pass. It was amazing, though. So I smiled at the picture, but I wasn't happy. But so then we got across on the other side, and these are some of the landscapes that you travel through. This is taken at a different journey, but this is a small town in Naur district. Completely isolated most of the year, no public transportation, no shop in the village, but incredible, beautiful landscapes and warm and hospitable people. And when we came, I don't think they had ever had visit from anyone from outside of Afghanistan. And when I asked if the governor of Ghazni had ever been there, they were just laughing. So no one comes, not even from the district governor of Naur comes to this village. But these are the people that we feel committed to support and somehow try to, together with them, to bring out of poverty. And if you look at the architecture, those of you who are interested, they are completely intact, 300, 400, 500-year-old villages on this route. Completely intact as they were built. Is a treasure archaeologically, I would think, rather than just protecting the big sites. These villages of ordinary people needs protection. And I've discussed it also with the ambassador of Aga Khan, that they would also, in addition to focus on the restoration of the fortress in Herat, would also select a few villages of ordinary people to support and protect. People are friendly, a bit scared sometimes, and friendly and curious about who these strange people are. A lot of children, like in most places of Afghanistan. And this is after you leave the... And when I was driving through, I felt like I was in the Western movie, because it really felt like somehow the Wild West. And I was thinking, all you need is a man with a Kalashnikov to stop and to hurt you. I mean, but why would they hurt us? And, you know, I think sometimes we feel that all the people of Afghanistan are out to get us, and they are not. So I feel safe when I travel on this road. We travel 2 cars together. None of them are armored. We travel 2 cars. The first time, only one. But after walking across the mountain, I was saying, if our car breaks down, we have to walk very far to get help. So we've decided to travel in 2 cars. And then you see houses like this. You know, for me, I don't know how it is for you, but for me it is magical. And you see all the cow dung on top that is used for fuel during the winter. This was taken in October. So they had stored all the cow dung. Of course, the bad part of that, they cannot use it as fertilizer for the fields. But these are vistas that you travel through for 14 hours. So even though I've done the journey many times, I'm never tired of it. And it's a friendly man that I met in Naur center, which is a wind-swept, beautiful little town. But then you also have these. This is the main road. So these are some of the sites that we travel through in Afghanistan. And every time you see reports of Afghanistan in the media, we see killing and we see war. But this is also Afghanistan. This is where I live when I'm in Jagori. This is our staff house. And getting up every morning, clean air, and looking at the tower. And they have made a little room for us there that we can sit in the evening and gaze over the valley. I think we pay something like $200 a month rent. But it's amazing. So this is Afghanistan. So, but going back to work, we feel that the center of everything that happens in a village, everything that needs to happen when it comes to development, is the school. So the school is at the center of all our work. So I'm trying to illustrate it in a very confusing kind of way, but I'll go back to the circles later. What we do in Ghazni, we support about 40 playgroups, and I'll tell you why later. About 90 schools with more than 100,000 children. In most of the schools, we have established child and youth-led initiatives. That includes theatre groups, environmental groups, but also Big Brother network. Those of you who are from Afghanistan or have lived in Afghanistan, you know that the main person after the father is the biggest brother. So if you get him on your side to get girls into school, then you have cracked, you have solved the riddle. So we have something called Big Brother Network. We are in the process of upgrading 95 teachers from rural schools to a diploma level. So instead of taking them out of school, what we do is that in 3 consecutive winter breaks, we have, together with the Teacher Training College, we have a 3-month intensive program. So they follow the regular diploma course, but they do it 3 months, 3 months, and 3 months. This way, they can continue teaching and earning money, and we don't take the teacher away from their kids. We do this 2 places in Ghazni, one in Ghazni city and the other one in Jagori. And then we have collaboration also with the Ghazni University and the Faculty of Agriculture. For everything we do in Ghazni, we spend about £600,000. And if you just divide that by the number of children, it's £6 per child. That's including all the staff costs. It's including construction of and repair of school buildings and toilets and everything we do. So I think it's quite cost effective, if I may say so. This is at the opening of, we have renovated the school. And this is at the opening where all the girls had lined up because they got new classrooms. This is in Malistan district. So if we're looking at, again, about development. So if we're thinking about the school is also a school community. Children and youth, of course, are a given. But parents and the school shura also needs to be on board, because the school cannot be a foreign element in the village. So parents have to be more involved in their children's education. Doesn't matter whether the parents can read or write, because many of these children are first-generation learners. But parents need to understand what's going on in the school. Teachers and school management, we need to improve teacher and school management. And then we have a small program of early childhood development. And there you see a school that has just been renovated. It was actually built by an Afghan businessman in Manchester about 15 years ago, but it had fallen into disrepair, and we supported the school in fixing it again, because we're not allowed to build school by the Afghan government. We are allowed to build toilets, so we do that. This is important for girls especially, to have access to a safe place. One of our focus is also children with disabilities. So these are kids from a school in Anguri village in Jagori district. This is another little boy, and he has a learning disability, and the father is a taxi driver. And he came to us when he heard that there were foreigners there. So he came with his son to ask if there was anything we could do to help his son. And when you see the protective arm of the father around the child like a safety belt in a car, yes, you see that love, and you see a son that is very comfortable with his father. We managed to make sure that the child was enrolled in the school on an age-appropriate level. So we have received report about him. He's doing well. He will never learn as fast as the other children, but he has friends, and he's learning to read and write and to count and to do basic math. And that's the purpose of education. But we have to start early as well. So early childhood development is important. And I was sitting with women we have something called self-help groups for women. And they have started a shop in the village because there was no village shop. So we supported them with a small grant of $500 to buy goods for their shop. And then it went quite well. So they could even hire a young girl from the village to man the shop. And then they said, we would like to do more, but we don't have time, we have many children. So then I said, well, what if 2 of you, because there were 15 women, 2 of you watch the children for everyone, and then the rest can work. Would that work? Would that be something you would be interested in? And they said, yes, that would be interesting for us. So from this discussion in Jagori, we started a program with playgroups. So they're women-owned, women-run, and they get basic equipment from us, basic training, and now you have 40 of them alone in Ghazni. And what we have heard from the schools, but we need to research more about it, is that the kids who go to these playgroups, they do better in school. They don't learn how to read and write, but they learn the pre-reading and pre-numerary skills that you need to succeed in school. And they learn to work together, play together, and to be together. So when we're looking at schools again, you see the circles are growing. We focus a lot on child and youth-led organizations, not only to reduce the numbers of refugees, that's not the purpose of it, but more than 50% of the Afghan population are youth. And they're the one who become soldiers, either for the opposition or for the government. They're the one who are getting into drug abuse. They're the one committing crime. So we have to make sure that young people have a voice, that they feel important. And in traditional Afghan society, they don't have much place. The decisions are made by the elderly. Yeah? So we try to have activities in school where they are given a space to think and express themselves. She is one of the leaders in the youth group in one of the schools in Malistan district. And she wants to become a midwife when she grows up. In one of the youth groups, they had a theatre play. And there they were actually taking the mickey out of the young Afghans who go abroad and come back. And suddenly who have forgotten Dari and only speak English and are moving in a different way and dressed differently. And they were having a comedy. They had written a comedy, and they had a play in front of the whole community, really taking the mickey out of these returnees that came back. A little bit like when in Norway our uncles went to America, they suddenly changed very rapidly. So you see the kids are laughing, and that was their own theatre group. And the elders of the village were also there to watch. So this is some of the results of what we do with the youth work. And then, of course, we need to make sure that there are jobs. So job creation is extremely important, and the issue of governance and civil society. So this is a discussion I had. He's the head of, or he was the head of the district assembly in Malistan district, because we need to work with these governance institutions. One of you had worked with, I think you're working with Afghan Aid, yes? You're one of the trustees, yes? And Afghan Aid was implementing the National Solidarity Program. Part of that was developing community development councils and district assemblies. So he is the elected representative of Malistan district as a parallel to the government structure. So we need to get them on board. But civil society, this is again one of the self-help groups where women get together and where they are producing, where they are making things and where they're earning an income. And what the women were saying, now when we earn an income, before we had no say in the family's economy. Now, because we bring money to the table, our husbands, our father-in-laws, our mother-in-laws are listening to us. So we have more of a say in the family economy than before. And what happened in this village, the men wanted to repair the mosque, and the only one who had money were the women. So they went to the self-help group, borrowed money. Of course, in the Islamic system, you're not allowed to take an interest. But that empowerment of women that was, that men needed to go to the women to ask for money. They got it, and the mosque was repaired. So this is another women's group. This is actually the one who made a shop and where the idea of the play group came. But women are also supported in agriculture, trying to break some of the gender stereotypes that we otherwise see in Afghanistan. It seems to me that this is garlic, but yeah. And they have competitions in the countryside in Afghanistan about the size of vegetables. So I don't know if, I've never ever seen a potato of this size actually, but they are extremely proud. So they bring the biggest vegetables, some tomatoes that are like melons and these amazingly large potatoes. And you can see he is very rightly proud of his harvest. So, and we also work with farmers to help them with their grapes and also with better techniques of drying the grapes. Those of you who have tried dried Afghan grapes know that they are the best in the world. Women are sewing, and here they are sewing based on orders from the nearest market. They are giving orders, and the women are working instead. So they're out competing Chinese import. So this is the complexity we feel of integrated rural development. And everything has to be done at the same time. Doing it bit by bit or doing one thing and then another afterwards doesn't work. We have to work with we have to identify the needs together with community members, all the needs that they have in their community, and then we have to address every single one of them where we have the capacity to do so. We don't have the money for building roads or to building expensive infrastructure, but we can work to build capacities. And another thing about the playgroups, which is so fantastic, is that in Afghan villages, most of them are relatives. But they don't necessarily interact a lot on a daily basis. They meet on Friday when they go to the mosque. If there is a funeral or if there is a wedding, they meet. But on a daily basis, they didn't talk a lot. But now, because they were taking care of each other's children, because they sat together, working together, there was a whole different atmosphere in the village. So a real solidarity and assistance to each other. So this was one of the things that the women said. If I have, and they would say, we do gossip about our husbands sometimes. But they have someone to talk to. Someone from outside the immediate family. So it has been a huge success. And it, again, sometimes too much money can destroy. Because we've seen other women self-help groups that with huge investments, they have fallen apart. But with small seed funding, a lot can be achieved. And for me, my 45 minutes are over. So for me, this is, again, the reason for everything that we do. And I have this picture in my office, and it's my favorite, because you see this one little girl. You see her hands are not quite clean, and her dress, if the picture is a bit bigger, is not either, but she is studying. She is learning. And she is the one that is going to build a different kind of Afghanistan for the future. So thank you so much for your attention. Yeah. Just get
get the lights back. Thank you very much indeed. I haven't been in Afghanistan now for 9 years, but it reminds me very much of my own experience. Watching Afghanistan from London, you indeed get the impression that it is nothing but a war zone. And unfortunately, quite a lot of it is a war zone. But people who work there, in my experience, are always much more optimistic about Afghanistan than people who don't. And that is because when you are down at this village level, you can see the very real differences that you're making. And I think that's a very good description of the sorts of things that can be achieved. Can I take questions? Cookie, and then gentleman here.
Sorry, I wasn't really putting my hand up, but I do have a question.
Well, right. Well, you're okay. Right. Yes.
Of course, organisations like the Norwegian Committee and others pump prime, get things going. How often, in your experience, or when can you leave? When does self-help become sustainable?
I think the self-help groups are already sustainable. I think what we have to realise is when a woman in any rural community, whether it's in Ghazni or elsewhere, when they gather and when they start something, it's a quantum leap for them. So to say that this can be done in 3 years and then you're out, I don't think so. But financial support is over a very, very short period of time. After that, we are there to give moral support. From time to time, we have a fantastic colleague of ours, an Afghan. Maybe you know Dr. Sami Hamid. He is a poet, and he is now working part-time with us. He brings in design into these work groups. So sometimes we would invite them to do a design workshop so that they can renew the products that they have. But they are sustainable. Education takes longer. It does. And I think we can't have, I don't believe in 3-year programs. Luckily, we have, with our Norwegian donors, we have been doing this for 9 years, but we change districts and villages sometimes. There is not enough money in the Afghan system to pay for education. There isn't. In the health sector, it is. Because as you know, people invest a lot of money in health. So we are now starting up a new program in Paktia, is education of health workers for Ghazni, Paktia, Paktika and Khost. Lab technicians, physiotherapists and pharmacists. If we can manage to raise the quality of the Afghan healthcare system, then people will spend less money going abroad to Pakistan and to India. And they spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year on that, even people that doesn't really have the money. So I think that is sustainable as soon as they are out. But they will not necessarily, and we have seen this with our midwifery education, not everybody gets a job. But then that woman who is a midwife in her village, she starts to help the women in the village. She's not always paid in money. Sometimes she gets eggs or a chicken or some meat or some vegetable, but it's a job. Right? So I think for health education, it works almost instantly. So I don't know if that was an answer to your question, but sustainability is tough and exit strategy is difficult. Yeah.
I'm trying to support what you say about the empowerment of women, but what is the Taliban attitude to this?
You know, I had a delegation of elders from Andar, and you know, some of these very traditional Pashto men, they have some tattoos here, yes, and on their knuckles. We were really village elders, and I'm quite sure many of them were support of the opposition. And because they came to us as their old friends, and we said, well, what do you need for us to do? And they said, we need education for our women. When we had in Khost province, which is deeply conservative south, we opened up education of community midwives and nurses. We had 50 study places. 500 girls applied, and we only allowed the girls from the rural communities to apply. And what was really nice, because they were all wearing the burqa, of course, and they were doing their tests, entry tests. And then one of our female medical doctors is fantastic. Her name is Dr. Khalida Safi. She had the notion that something was not right. What they were doing under the burqa, they were using a smartphone. They were communicating with doctors outside to get cheating, basically. And some of their brothers who were there, and when this was discovered, they were saying, I wish we could wear a burqa when we have tests, you know. So the Taliban, I feel, there is a change, and they have officially gone out to say that they support education and health, and women can work both in education and health. The biggest problem is that there's a vicious circle, because if you don't have a female teacher, you don't get the girls through grade 10 or grade 12, which you need to get into higher education. So we need to crack that code with them, not against them. But we need to find a solution, because in these communities, no woman from outside is ever going to work. So we need to find a way there. But I feel they have changed a bit. But this is only in those communities that are really ruled by Taliban, and not by those who are kind of affiliated with Taliban and who are more, I would say, criminal networks in the north that are not necessarily Taliban as we know it. They are not under a direct structure. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You said you had to bring in governments and civil society.
Yes.
Afghan Aid's been very much involved in developing these CDCs.
Yeah.
Have you actually been working on that as well? And because the idea is, I think, that the CDCs should become, if you like, the main sort of local government organisations. And how have you been relating to them in the work you do? We
do everything in the village together with the CDCs.
Right.
But we also applied for the Citizen Charter, which is now called, and we got it. But then another more powerful organisation than us wielded their political power, and we lost it. But we still work with the CDCs. The CDCs has 250 families as a member. And we're not talking households, so we're talking families, and there can be multiple families in one household. And for me, it's too small. I think the idea of cluster CDCs are better. In the new Citizen Charter, they're going to have education and health committees under the CDCs and under the cluster CDCs. I think it's too complex, and I think I don't think over time it will work. And we work simultaneously with the traditional governance mechanisms. And personally, I believe it was a mistake. And Ashraf Ghani was part of the ones who planned the NSP program. I feel it was a mistake to develop a new set of structure when you had an existing one. It would have been more difficult maybe, but more sustainable to work with the traditional structures, made sure that women had a space in the traditional shuras and in the traditional jirgas, to make sure that young people were involved there as well. It wouldn't have been easy, but that would have been sustainable. I don't think the CDCs are sustainable without money. Yeah.
You mentioned just briefly agriculture. Well, it doesn't seem to be one of your focuses. But we are constantly sort of bombarded by the question of opium poppies and drug cultures and all these things which are contributing to a skewing of the economy. I don't know to what extent that happens in Ghazni area, but could you say a word about how people are trying to tackle this in a sensible way?
Well, we do work quite a bit with agriculture as well, but because of the funding that we receive
much too little for that part. But we work with lead farmers and follow farmers. Ghazni is not very much of an opium growing province, but it's a transit province. And I know that it may be difficult to control, but you know, in many of these areas, opium is probably the best crop, if you think agriculture-wise, that you can grow, because it doesn't require too much attention, it's high income, and so on and so forth. So when we're talking about the medical opium that is grown, that is grown in France and Italy is for me a shame. I think countries like Afghanistan should do this under controlled, in a controlled environment. And then we also see, and I know that's not easy, but, and then of course you see the drug epidemic in the US at the moment, where so many young people, after taking prescription drugs, become heavy drug addicts because they're using artificial opiates, in a sense, opiate replacements. I think one needs to provide better opportunities for them to actually grow it in a legal way. I know that was rambling a bit, but Helmand, and I think Helmand is the most one that grows. I think and Afghanistan, of course, is the biggest producer in the world of opium. And if Helmand was a separate country, it would still have been the biggest one. So, but the transition route is going to the north, and this is why you see the Taliban also expanding in the north. These are more criminal parts of the network, but they are transporting to Uzbekistan, to Turkmenistan, to Tajikistan, and then on to Europe. But then we also know that, and this was a report that shocked Afghanistan, that 1 million women are using opiates. And we knew that there was about 1 to 1.5 million men, age 18 and above, who used opium, but that so many women did. And of course, as a woman, if you're hungry, it's cheaper to buy opium than food. We know there is a lot of domestic violence in Afghanistan. There is nowhere to run. For a woman then to use opium as a way of escape. And we know that because they have to work, they put a bit of opium on the tongue of their babies so that they will sleep, so that they can take care of the other children and the housework and everything else they have to do. So it's tricky, the whole issue of opium. And we have started, what we've done in Ghazni is to grow saffron, because saffron is another high income crop. But it's difficult to export it. So, but we have had success with saffron production. Dried fruits and nuts, but dried fruits and nuts, they are water-intensive plants. So they, we also have to think about that. I think the main thing the government can do to stop the opium trade is to help Afghan farmers export their goods, because every time you, either as a businessman or as a cooperative, when you want to export something, you have to pay a lot of money in bribes. So corruption is really creating enormous problems for even getting rid of the opium production, or reducing it only to the medical necessary production. So.
I'll just add, some people here know this. I spent a lot of time actually working on the Afghanistan drug problem. I was the UK's Special Representative for International Drugs for 5 years. There's a lot that could be said about this. I would say there is a perception in the West generally that Afghanistan is opium from border to border, and it is simply not the case. I don't know what the up-to-date figure is, but certainly 10 years ago, when Afghanistan was already exceeding all known production levels for opium, it occupied a maximum of 4% of cultivable land in Afghanistan. So it's a huge problem, but it's not a huge element of the agriculture sector. Other questions? Gentleman over there.
My experience and knowledge of Afghanistan is almost 50 years old by now, but I think that even then, and for some years particularly after that, many Afghans, however uneducated they might be, had some perception of the Russians as a foreign enemy and the British because of the role of the British in Afghanistan, and then increasingly, of course, since then, Americans and Russians. I'm just wondering, from your experience, what perception people have of Norway, Norwegians, and other Scandinavians, and is this helpful, do you think, in the work that you've been doing?
I think most Afghans have probably no perception at all of Norway. But now, since 2015, there almost everywhere you go, somebody has a family member in Oslo or Lillehammer or Tønsberg. Every time I go to the supermarket, I see Afghans in Norway, in my hometown. So there's more of a perception now. I think the fact that we are not seen as an aggressive power helps us. Yeah? I think this is both Norway, Sweden, partly Denmark, who are quite active, all of them in Afghanistan. I don't think we are, and even in Faryab, where we actually have troops, we are relatively well liked. They didn't do a very good job, I think, because Faryab is now one of the most insecure provinces. But they are relatively well liked. I think it helps. It does help us. But I think what has happened over the past few years is that the Russians are now being embraced by the Afghans because they look at in Kabul Makroyan. Yeah? These buildings were built by the Russians at the time. They're still standing. Most Afghans will say before the Americans came there was no corruption. This, of course, completely a myth. Corruption has always been part of Afghan society, but the level of corruption that is now is a result of the NATO and the US intervention. They may have had the right enemies at times, but they had many of the wrong friends. You have Nur Muhammad Atta in Balkh. He's become one of the richest men in Afghanistan, and I can't imagine that was all by legal means. Mr. Alokosai, he being pushed, and I'm telling you something that isn't publicly known yet, but I want to tell you still. 8 provinces in Afghanistan, the health services are going to be given to a private company, probably Alokosai. The government doesn't want it, the minister doesn't want it, but the World Bank is pushing for it. So this extreme privatization, again, is driven by the World Bank, by the US, and by Western powers. The elections that we are preparing for now has so far costed more than 200 lives. Is donor-driven. My personal opinion, and you maybe completely disagree with me, but I think it would have been better to just close the parliament for now and have a war cabinet. And because one man in Khost, he said, we are not afraid of the Taliban. We did a corruption study for MEC, it's an institute started by the president, an independent institute that looks into different sectors, and we worked on corruption in education. And one father in Khost, he said, I'm not afraid of the Taliban. If they kill a child or Afghan women, they will have more children. But I'm afraid of the parliamentarians because they are taking our future away. This was his quote. Yes? So personally, I think there should be no parliamentary election, and you remove the parliament until you have peace. How can you conduct a fair election in a country that is at war? Currently, in Ghazni, there is not a single Pashto member of parliament from Ghazni because it was boycotted. So all the 10 or 12 parliamentarians from Ghazni are Hazara. So of course, is not free and fair. So this is a long answer to a short question, but I think the Russians are becoming more popular because people have forgotten the bad things. We tend to do that as human beings. Huh? We think about the good things of the past and we forget about the bad ones. So they are increasingly popular. And the US, I don't think so much England, because you're not that much anymore on the ground. So it's very much US has become, in the sense, the enemy of the people in Afghanistan. So.
Thank you. You've got last question then. Yeah.
With respect, organisations like Norwegian Committee and all the other Afghan Aid and everybody else, if you look at the enormity of the problem, they're only nibbling at villages and small-scale stuff. You need government to come in to tie everything together. What is the one thing that the government ought to be doing that is practicable, that would really help?
One thing?
Two things.
I think if we're looking at the not think so grand. The president and the government is thinking about these grand programs. It doesn't work. I think small. I think generally small is beautiful, and I think that's why Afghan Aid and NAC and others have been succeeding. Not be so over-ambitious. What I mentioned when it comes to teachers having bachelor degrees is ridiculous. Maybe not in 20 years, but not now. So be a little bit more moderate. If you really want to succeed with health and education in rural areas, there are thousands of scholarships that are given to Afghanistan every year by India, Pakistan, US, UK, other countries. Turkey. I don't think you get healthcare workers to work in remote areas if you give them more money. But if you say to a young man or a young woman that if you work there for 3 years, you will get a scholarship to get a diploma, or to get a bachelor degree, or to get a master's degree. So you can, and this doesn't cost more, it's just a redistribution from those who are well connected to those who actually does a service for the country. And this, you don't have to look to the West for that. I lived many years, about 10 years in Indonesia. And the best university in Indonesia is the Gajah Mada in Yogyakarta. And they say, and they are, the leaders of Indonesia are educated in Gajah Mada. And they said, if you want to govern Indonesia, you have to know the countryside. So all the students in Gajah Mada had to be for 3 or 4 months in the countryside and do practical work. So these are simple things that they can also do in Afghanistan. If you want to get into Kabul University, it doesn't help that you know someone or that you went to the best school so you have the best grades. What needs to be done is that those who are willing to go into the hardship areas, they need to get a study place. Doesn't cost more money, but it would change Afghanistan. So these are some things that I think the Afghan government should do. And again, it doesn't cost any additional dollar or Afghan paisa.
Thank you very much indeed.